Welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast, a mix of both solo episodes and expert interviews. Our ideal listener is an early career, ambitious, and passionate online language services provider. She is committed to professional growth and achieving success in the fiercely competitive translation and interpreting industry. She balances multiple responsibilities with resourcefulness, values mentorship, is open to learning, and investing in her professional development journey. She embraces technology and seeks to optimize workflow, eager to connect with like-minded peers and build out her professional network. She is determined to overcome challenges and become a sought-after freelance translator. And here's your host, medical translator and translator business mentor, Jason Willis Lee.
Rachel Rozen is the founder of Connection Catalyst, empowering individuals and teams with networking and relationship building skills. She is experienced in hospitality, food tech, and global team building, leveraging networking as a transformative life skill. She is a passionate connector, avid reader, sports fan, and culinary adventurer with a mission to make networking impactful. And welcome to another episode of How to Find More Direct Clients, the podcast that makes digital marketing both easier and more enjoyable by blending smart business strategies with just the right dose of tech. I'm your host, Jason Willis Lee, digital marketing specialist, and today I'm very excited to say hello to my special guest. Her name is Rachel Rozen, and she is the CEO of Connection Catalyst, and hopefully she has a very dynamic take on her industry. Rachel, welcome to the show. Fantastic to see you here. Thank you for your time. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me here today.
You're very welcome. So can you just as an icebreaker for the audience, could you just share a little bit about your personal journey? What are you doing right now in business, and what's your unique take on the industry? Where do you see yourself in maybe 12 months time, or 3 years? I don't know. Any period.
So I really focus on being a network coach. So I like to think about it as I'm starting a new category because there aren't a lot of people out there that are coaching individuals on how to network more effectively.
Right.
Everyone's told to go network, but nobody's really shown how to do it. And I realize that networking is truly a skill set, but we're never taught that. Whether you go to business school, an undergrad, or in a workplace, you're never taught how to do it. You're just told, oh, you have to go network. You have to network to do so many different things in life, but it's really about building relationships. And so for me, I had worked for a very long time in the hospitality industry and hospitality tech, made my way all the way to the C-suite. And when I got to the top, I realized I didn't really want to be there anymore, and I didn't know where I wanted to go next. I was a chief customer officer, and when I left that role, I knew I had a network for my next opportunity, but I didn't want to stay in the same industry that I was in or in the same type of role.
Right.
And I had been working so much that I really only knew my clients and the people that I worked with. And my network to me was very small, which it was. And I had to start from scratch. And so I know that anybody can network at any point in their life to build it out however they'd like to make that happen. But for me, I really see a vision where people are making more connections. When back in the day, everything was about the communities that you lived in. And then all of a sudden now we have social media. So people are building communities online, which is great as well. But we also need that interaction in person. So I feel like there's going to be more of in person than there was before, because 4 years ago, it was completely cut off when we went, well, I guess it's almost 5 years ago now,
Right.
when we went to COVID, when COVID happened all
Yep.
over the world.
Yep.
We just shut down, and people are really trying to learn how to do that again. And that's why I think this is so important, because people really need connections throughout their life. It's not just in business, it's also personal. And I'm really passionate about helping others get out of their shell if they're struggling with that, to make those connections. Or there are people that feel that they do it well, but it's not sticky enough, or they don't know how to follow through. And so everything seems transactional. So there's a lot of different ways that I can and have worked with people.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, I teach VIP networking to my audience as well. So I work with online language service providers. We are freelance translators, interpreters, copywriters. So let's get into your content a bit more in detail. Um, Transforming networking from icky to sticky. I'd like to know what that means. I mean, most people see networking as transactional. It can be awkward. It can be inauthentic, and that's not good. We all want to be authentic. How it explain to my audience what you mean by icky to sticky? Is it just being more cohesive, more authentic? What do you mean by that phrase?
Yeah, to me, it means that you're more authentic and you really get to know the person for the person versus what you need from that person. Because people really struggle when it comes to networking. You often hear about the give to get. And yes, you might want to get something from somebody, you want to give something back to them, but it's also just about learning who they are as an individual. So, whatever it is that they enjoy doing. So, for example, if they're passionate about something, you don't have to be passionate about that same topic, but you talk to them about that topic. So, if you really love dogs, well, I do like dogs, but if I didn't, I would still talk to you about dogs and build a relationship knowing that you want to learn more about that person and also be curious about them versus just going to you and saying, hey, Jason, I need your help with this project, and then I never see you again.
Right.
And the more that you can learn about someone and get to know them and engage with them, the more opportunity you have to grow that relationship. Not every person you're going to meet is going to be there forever. There's an old adage saying people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime, but they may come in for a reason and then last a lifetime. They may bounce in and out. Like there's lots of opportunities for people to be in your life, but you also need to put in that effort to continue to keep them there. And many people think that they're waiting for the other person to reach out, but we can reach out and continue that connection as well.
I like that. So networking is a life-changing skill. So my networking. So I look at this from a professional association point of view. We have a number of professional associations where we all get together, 3 or 4 times a year at an event, and there are several of those, maybe half a dozen. Then, of course, you've got BNI, Business Networking International. You've got other business groups for more outside of the industry. How could you talk a little bit towards networking as a life skill, possibly a life-changing skill, and how it can improve business owners' lives? So solopreneurs, most of my audience will be freelancers. So like myself, solopreneurs looking to be more entrepreneurial, looking to see themselves as consultants and solve business problems rather than just service providers. That's the kind of bridge, the journey I like to take people on. Could you talk to it as a life-changing skill? How do people develop this, and what are some of the problems you've encountered? Is it imposter syndrome? Is it fear of failure? That kind of thing?
Yeah, so I would begin with saying that a lot of people feel like they should only be talking to people within their own industry or the type of role that they have or their specific client that they're trying to reach. And I really think that it goes beyond that because you never know who somebody else knows. It doesn't mean that you don't talk to those people. Of course you will, but that's kind of your built-in network in a way. But you should also be talking to people outside of your day to day. Who are the people that you might not encounter that you talk about what you do? Especially for freelancers and solopreneurs, let other people know what you do because they might know somebody that could become a client for you and you don't even realize. So, whether you're on a train, on a plane, on a bus, you're at one of your kids' sporting events, you're at your own sporting event that you're going to visit or a concert, wherever you're striking up a conversation with someone, the grocery store, if you're having a conversation with people, a lot of that often comes out in conversation. Someone will say, oh, well, tell me about what you do. And if you don't tell them what you do or what you're looking for, you're losing out because people might be able to help you and you don't even realize that. I'll just tell you a quick story about someone that is a friend of mine that was kind of coaching. Um, and she was on a plane and she happened to strike up a conversation with the person next to her on the plane. And she would have never have done that ever before. And she was looking to talk to someone in higher ed and potentially be an adjunct professor in higher ed. She's been in the C-suite in public companies before, and she happened to talk to someone that was in higher ed, sat next to her on the plane, that did exactly that of helping people get to become professors. If she didn't start that conversation, it would have never have even have happened. And we don't know how someone else could help us in the world. And so many people, back to what you were mentioning before, have a fear. And it could be a fear of rejection, a fear of failure, imposter syndrome. There's so many fears that people have, especially when you're going to in-person networking events. But the reality is that you're not the only person in the room that has that fear. Other people are also scared. They don't know how to talk to someone to strike up a conversation, or they also might feel rejected if they ask for something and you can't help them. And when we realize that we're not the only person in the room that feels that way, it just gets a little bit easier. Our shoulders start to melt and it becomes a little bit easier to have a conversation.
Could you talk a little to the human connection and the importance of this in work today? Because it's so AI powered, it's so AI centric. Excuse me. Because I'm getting into this bridge between AI and leaning into AI, certainly for productivity. I would say work smarter, not harder. AI enhanced productivity, that's fine. What is the importance of human connection, do you think, in the next 5 years as we head to 2030? This project, the next 5 year block that we're starting in a few days' time. How important will human connection be? As you said, the COVID pandemic was nearly 5 years ago, so we all kind of lost connections. It was anti-human connection for a while. How important will that be, and how do you encourage people to network? Because the connections are so important. I mean, I don't get any paid work if I don't have a relationship with the person giving me the work, right? And I'm sure that's the same for you as well. How important will that be, do you think, over the next 5 years, the human touch?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, one of the biggest things I know is happening in America, but I'm pretty sure it's globally as well, is the loneliness epidemic, where a lot of people are just feeling lonely and stay at home because they don't know how to make those connections with other people, even though they need it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's even more important now to focus on how can we get out of our shell and meet people. And it can doesn't always have to start on a business side. It could be something that you just really enjoy doing. Like if you really like pickleball, go join a pickleball league. You might meet someone there that could then become a client or become a business partner. You just never know. But I think more and more in the next 5 years, it's going to be about where are the places and spaces that you're spending time outside of your home? What is that third place that we kind of got rid of that we need to get back? And so in the past, it was, parks and libraries, and now and it's coffee shops, and some coffee shops are getting rid of seats because they don't want people to hang out there all day. But there needs to be more third places or spaces for people to go and hang out and to meet people. And especially for adults, it's very hard, or it seems harder and harder to make friends. So, where are places that you can go that you might have a like interest or similarity that you can get started? Any sort of affinity that you might have. And that could be starting from your alumni association, from the school that you went to that you want to spend more time with, or in your specific industry or role and that type of community. Or it could just be something that you really enjoy doing. Like maybe it's joining a book club. There's a cool book club concept that's in New York, and I think it's going into more cities. But basically, they rent out a space. You come and read a book, and then you read for like maybe an hour. And then you talk to people in the room about the book that you're reading. They talk about the book that they're reading. So it's like you can both do things on your own, but then you also have community as well.
Could you give us a glimpse? I'm imagining you have digital products and content on relationship building. Could you give us a little glimpse of how you go about this topic? Because it is so important and vital for people to. This is probably one of the number one obstacle to business building, right? People who are fearing failure, imposter syndrome. Maybe they have problems with sociability or building relationships. How do you go about this in your content? And could you give us a little, sneak preview of how you roll when you're teaching you have a consultancy client or a customer learning from you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that I will focus on with people. So, from their mindset to the energy that they're bringing into a room, how can they either bring their energy up or bring their energy down? I have a few different frameworks as well. Just kind of on the topic that we're talking about right now, I think one thing that's really helpful for people to do that they don't realize is there's so many people that they already know that they can reconnect with or rebuild those relationships with that they don't think that they want to talk to those people. And I like to call that your warm network. So one of the things I have my clients do is what I call creating a warm network map. And so you write down every place or that you have had contact with people around affinity. So it could be your alumni associations. Where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? Where did you work in the past? Where are the places that you go to today? And that could be both digitally or in person. So maybe you're on a bunch of different Facebook groups that you interact with. That's okay as well to put on this warm map. And then once you realize how many different places that you're actually active in, two things need to happen. One, what's missing from that you should be spending time in? And we evaluate looking at that and saying, oh, well, maybe we should look at joining this type of community or this type of group. And so you know where your whole community looks like today and where you might be missing. And then the second thing is going back to those groups and saying, oh, who are 5 people from these groups that I should reconnect with? Because reconnection is a really good point to do that we forget about. It happens. People move away from each other. They get married. They have kids. You change jobs. You lose track of people, but you should still reconnect with them. And I try to do that every so often. Yesterday, actually, I wrote down 5 people's names that I haven't talked to in a while. And I sent them all messages and said, hey, their name, I've been thinking about you. How are things going? Of the 5 people, only 2 people responded to me yesterday. I still
Mhm.
expect to hear from the other 3. It just
Yeah.
may not be and the exact timeline because you never know what people have going on. And I'm not going to give up if I don't hear from them this week or in the next couple of weeks, because obviously at the holidays, I'll still reach out again. But we often forget to do those reach outs and we think that we need to constantly be meeting new people. But there's so many people in our past that care about us and they're just waiting for you to reach out because there's no reason why not to.
Yeah, I kind of do that myself, perhaps not as intentionally as you. I have people I'm attached to, and I keep in touch with them. I was thinking the emotional attachment is important, isn't it, to people, obviously professional relationships, personal relationships. I was going to ask you what proportion of your clients, I mean, how do you differ? How does your approach differ, your methodology? And I'm sure you go through a framework that you're known for. How does that differ when you're working with teams, maybe team building within a company, maybe a corporate client, or with a solopreneur, such as myself or someone in my audience? How would that approach? How do you sort of teach differently according to the sort of the colors of the of your client?
Yeah, so all my frameworks are still the same. And when I do group coaching with through my own company, I generally bring in people from all different angles. So I could have someone that is a solopreneur, someone that is currently working in a company, someone that's on the job hunt. And the thing that's very interesting as I've been building this out is that the thread is the same for everybody. It's more so on what is the individual themselves need versus what their goals are. Because we still want to understand their goals, but every individual is different. And I like to say networking is not a one size fits all. It's about learning the tools that can help you be better at networking. And then what is most effective for you as an individual to be able to make this to become a habit and for you to get to be able to reach the goals that you want to reach.
Okay. Rachel, what's the best business advice you've received in your career? Maybe it's something you've given, some advice you've given to a mentee, or it's advice a coach or a mentor has given you. What's the best business advice you've ever absorbed from someone else?
That's a great question. So there's a quote that I was given, and I'm not going to say it exactly correct, but basically, your eyes can only see and your ears can only hear that which you are looking for.
Right.
And that has been huge for me because I realize that we often stick to what we know and we don't really allow ourselves to learn more. And that's one of the other reasons why I really truly believe in networking, building those relationships, because the more people we bring in from outside of our circles or people that we may not have normally connected with, they're going to teach us something. And as long as we're curious and want to learn something more, we're expanding our eyes and our ears and the way that we do the work that we do. But if we're always just talking to the same people all the time, we're never going to grow or learn. And we
Mm.
all need to do that, especially in business.
What's the first word that comes to mind when I say the term relationship building? What's the first term that immediately comes to mind?
Connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are you reading right now? What book are you reading? What was the last book you read if you don't have one on the go now?
So I read a lot. Every book that I pick up, I read right away because I read about 80 to 100 pages an hour. So I read 151 books this year. Let me tell you what the last book was that I read because I don't remember what it was called.
Is that speed reading? Is that speed, would that be considered speed reading? That sounds pretty
Yeah,
fast.
so I learned to speed read going into high school, from high school going into college.
Uh-huh.
So the methodology that I use is called brain chunking. So
Right.
instead of reading John walked across the street as each individual word, I just read the whole sentence at once.
Mm-hmm.
And then you learn to kind of look at a whole paragraph and then a whole page. And
Well,
so you can get faster and faster.
okay.
So the last book that I read was last book I read was a fiction book called Mrs. Nash's Ashes. And the last nonfiction book I read was $100 Million Leads by Alex Hermosi.
I read that myself. I bought that this, I think the launch was this August. I read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked it up. I was on the launch event and I bought it from the beach actually. I think I was in Santander and I bought that at the at the beach.
Awesome.
Great. Um, could you recommend a book specifically on relationship building? Do you have a book out, or could you recommend a reference for us to put in the show notes on this topic?
Yeah, I don't have a book yet myself. It's on my plan
Yeah.
to do that.
Uh-huh.
But let me tell you, just pull it up. There's a few books I read. I read a lot of books around relationship building. A couple this year that I read that I really liked. The first one is Joy of Connections by Dr. Ruth Westheimer. So she wrote that book right before she passed away. It came out, I think, about a month after she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is The Laws of Connection by David Robson. That was a really interesting book to learn more about connection from a scientific standpoint. And the third one I will give you is How to Know a Person by David Brooks. I thought that was also a very interesting book on how to really learn and see other people for who they are.
Right. We'll get links to all those references in the show notes. Rachel, what is the biggest myth that you see when it comes to relationship building? What is that? I like to bust myths, and people's objections often come, we as entrepreneurs are selling products. There's always objections not to take action, or I don't have time or I don't have money. These are common objections. What is the biggest myth when it comes to this topic, relationship building or building connections, that you see in your work?
I think a big one is a lot of people feel that they need to have a lot of connections and that makes them more valuable. So we see a lot of influencers, they have hundreds of thousands of followers or
Right.
millions of followers, and like that makes you be someone that's good at connections, but it's not. People just want to follow your content, or maybe they don't, they just whatever the reason is why they're following them, but do you truly know those people?
Mm,
Someone that has 100 1,000 followers, do they know them or do you know them? Not really. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of the connection that you have with people.
Right.
And so you might look and compare yourself and say, "Oh, I only have, 1,000 connections on LinkedIn and somebody else has 20,000 connections. So what? If you know those 1,000 people really, really well, do you think the other person knows 20,000 people in the same way? Are those 20,000 people going to help them? A person that is excellent when it talking about connections and relationships is Esther Perel. And last year she did a connection event where she went to different cities and she wanted to bring people together so they could meet in person.
Mm-hmm.
And she was interviewed by Brene Brown on one of those talks that she did. And one thing that really resonated with me when I was listening to the podcast that she was on with Brene was so many people have hundreds of thousands of followers, but they never have someone that could take care of their cat if they went on vacation.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those are vanity metrics. I think you're talking about the likes and followers is very much a vanity metric. I'm absolutely about the engagement on. I'm as much an audience builder as anyone, as any entrepreneur, but it's all about the engagement in the list. And if people are not reading your emails 3 months, I tend to purge the list. I do a list clean, and I'd much rather have a smaller group of engaged followers than a larger number. That is just a vanity metric. Rachel, one more final sort of quick fire question. What's the worst investment you ever made? It may be in relationships, it may be in financial terms, in your business, in your life. What's the worst investment you ever made? Can you help us steer, not make the same mistake?
I think one of the worst investments I made was when I first left my full-time job. I thought that I needed my resume and my LinkedIn updated right away.
Right,
And I invested $3,000 in someone to get me update my executive resume and update my LinkedIn. And I didn't vet them well enough. I heard about them from a community that I was a part of, and it was a waste of money. I should have really done my research and found who I could use that was going to give me the best information and
right.
update that I use. But also, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. So I wasted my time creating this resume that I had to keep updating as I was figuring out what I wanted to do as my
Mm,
next move. I
yeah,
do think that having a good LinkedIn is important and having that filled out well. And the same thing with the resume, but finding a really good resume writer that can help you, because doing it on your own is okay, but having that person to just listen to and bounce ideas off of when it comes
mm,
to both your LinkedIn and your resume
yeah.
is really important. And I also help people look at their LinkedIn and say, okay, how can we make this be more valuable for you? Because it is a piece of networking today.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is important. Certainly, I place great importance on LinkedIn. But yeah, 3K for a CV and LinkedIn sounds a high
Yes.
figure to pay. Rachel, any final thoughts or final takeaway for the audience? What would your one phrase takeaway be from this discussion, which has been so interesting?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to stay curious. When you're talking to people, get to know them for who they are, not just what you do. It's really about the other person in the conversation. It's not about yourself. It will eventually come out and you'll be able to talk about yourself,
Right.
but don't lead with that. Try to lead with curiosity in the other person, and that's going to lead to a longer lasting relationship.
Where can my listeners connect with you? Which platform is best to connect with you? And do you have a free gift or some opt-in that we can find out more about this topic to get a bit closer to you?
Yeah, so the best way is LinkedIn. I do a free webinar every month on networking, which is a great way to learn more
Right.
about how I coach and some of the frameworks that I use. And so we'll make sure that that's in the show notes as well, so people can join if they would like to as well to learn more.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. All right, let's wrap it up for today's episode of How to Find More Direct Clients. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions on the ever evolving landscape of language and digital marketing. Until next time, do stay on your game and remember to future proof your career in the AI era. Bye from me, and many thanks again to Rachel. Nice.
Here's a fun fact about Jason. Jason was a professional chorister in a symphonic choir in Spain for a few seasons. Thanks for tuning in to the How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, why not head over to www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com to access all our tools and resources to monetize and future-proof your freelance translation business. And don't forget to hit the plus button in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or subscribe in Spotify to be notified when new episodes drop. For regular tips and insights, business strategy, or marketing techniques straight to your inbox, please sign up at www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com.